Picture a dusty road at dusk, the kind that hums with the faint buzz of cicadas and smells of sun-warmed gravel. Somewhere along that road, a loyal dog named Duke waits, his amber eyes fixed on the horizon. For 4 years, he's held his post at a lonely gas station, a silent sentinel of hope. This isn't just a story about a dog. It's about lealtad that defies time, about saudade that lingers like the scent of rain on an old wool blanket, and about the milagre of love that finds its way home. So, settle in, maybe with a cup of coffee that reminds you of your grandmother's kitchen, and let's walk through Duke's journey together. It's the kind of tale that makes you pause, look at your own pets a little longer, and wonder about the lessons they're quietly teaching us. The gas station sat at the edge of a sleepy town, where the air carried the tang of motor oil and the faint sweetness of wild honeysuckle. Duke, a German shepherd with a coat like burnished mahogany, claimed his spot by the rusted pump every morning. His paws scuffed the cracked pavement, worn smooth by years of pacing, and his ears twitched at the rumble of every passing car. 4 years ago, tragedy struck. A car accident stole the Carter family from him, leaving Duke alone. Yet, there he stayed, as if Fidelidade could summon them back. The townsfolk whispered about him, their voices soft with awe. "That dog's got a heart bigger than most people," they'd say, shaking their heads. Who could blame him for hoping? Haven't we all clung to something long past reason? But what kept Duke there, through rain and frost, when even the kindest hands couldn't coax him away? The seasons turned, each one painting the world in new colors, but Duke's vigil never wavered. In winter, his breath puffed in frosty clouds, and the ground felt like cold iron beneath him. Come summer, the asphalt burned, and he'd pant under the awning, his tongue lolling like a tired flag. Strangers tossed him scraps, greasy fries, half-eaten sandwiches, and old Mrs. Delaney from the diner brought bowls of water, her hands trembling with arthritis. "You're a good boy, Duke," she'd murmur, but he'd only glance at her before turning back to the road. It was as if he believed the next car might carry his people. The thought tugs at you, doesn't it? That kind of perseverance, it's rare, almost holy. What was it about that road that held him so tightly? Nights were the hardest. The gas station's neon sign buzzed like a trapped firefly, casting a greenish glow over Duke's fur. He'd curl up on a frayed blanket someone left, the fabric smelling of dust and faded lavender. The stars above seemed to watch him, and maybe they whispered that the universe had its plans. Duke wasn't just waiting. He was surviving, carrying a torch of Esperanza in his chest. The townsfolk tried to help. They built him a makeshift shelter, but he rarely used it. His eyes stayed on the horizon, where the road disappeared into the dark. You ever wonder what goes through a dog's mind? Maybe Duke saw his family in every headlight, heard their voices in the wind. Could a dog's heart really hold on to love that long? Sometimes kids on bikes would stop, giggling as they tossed sticks for Duke to chase. He'd humor them, trotting after the stick with a half-hearted wag, but he never strayed far. It was like he'd made a vow, one he kept with every beat of his stubborn heart. The townsfolk started calling him the gas station ghost, a name that carried both fondness and sorrow. They'd drive by, slowing down to check on him, their radios crackling with old country tunes. Duke became part of the town's rhythm, a living reminder that lealtad doesn't always need a reason. But deep down, didn't they all wish someone would find out why he waited? Who could unlock the mystery of Duke's unwavering devotion? One spring evening, as the air grew thick with the scent of blooming dogwoods, a stranger pulled into the gas station. His boots crunched on the gravel, and Duke lifted his head, ears perked. The man, Noah Patterson, wasn't like the usual passers-by. He carried a notebook, his fingers stained with ink, and his eyes held the kind of curiosity that digs for truth. Noah had heard about Duke from a trucker at a diner, a story too good to ignore. As he crouched beside the dog, offering a gentle scratch, he felt it, a pull, like fate nudging him forward. Something told him Duke's story was bigger than a small-town legend. What would Noah uncover about the dog who refused to give up? Noah Patterson wasn't the kind of man who chased ghost stories, but something about Duke stuck to him, like the scent of pipe tobacco on an old jacket. He sat at the gas station's curb, the evening air heavy with the musk of damp earth after a spring shower. His notebook lay open, pages curling in the breeze as he watched Duke's steady gaze on the road. Noah, a journalist with a knack for finding truth in forgotten corners, had spent years chasing leads in smoky newsrooms, the clatter of typewriters still echoing in his memory. But this wasn't just a story. It felt like a mission. Duke's lealtad deserved more than whispers. It demanded answers. Who had this dog lost, and why did he wait? What secrets would Noah's curiosity unearth? The town's diner became Noah's second home, its vinyl booths creaking under him as he sipped coffee that tasted like it had been brewed since the 70s. Between bites of greasy hash browns, he listened to the locals' tales about Duke. Old Mr. Hensley, with a voice like gravel, swore he'd seen Duke chase a car once, barking like he recognized it. Others mentioned a family, the Carters, who'd lived nearby before a tragedy nobody liked to talk about. Noah's pen scratched faster, the pieces clicking like a jigsaw puzzle. He felt the pull of destino, as if Duke's story had been waiting for him to find it. Ever notice how some stories seem to choose you? Where would these fragments of memory lead him? Noah hit the library next, where the air smelled of yellowed paper and wax polish. He pored over microfiche, the machine's hum a soft lullaby as grainy headlines flickered by. There it was, a 1971 article about a car accident on Route 17. The Carter family, John, Ellen, and their boy Timmy, hadn't made it, but no mention of a dog. Noah leaned back, rubbing his eyes, the weight of abandon settling in his chest. Duke must have been with them, left behind in the chaos. The thought stung. Haven't we all lost something and wished for a second chance? Noah knew. He had to keep digging for Duke's sake. What else was hiding in the town's faded records? Back at the gas station, Noah crouched beside Duke, offering a bit of jerky from his pocket. Duke sniffed it, his nose twitching like he was weighing Noah's intentions, then took it gently. That small act of confianza felt like a victory. Noah started asking around, knocking on doors where the paint peeled like old memories. A retired mechanic, Gus, remembered the Carter's dog. "Big old shepherd," he said, squinting. "Love that boy, Timmy, something fierce." Gus's voice cracked, and Noah felt it too, the sordid of a bond that time couldn't erase. Piece by piece, Duke's past was coming into focus. How close was Noah to unraveling the full story? By week's end, Noah had a lead. Ellen Carter's sister, Mary, lived 2 towns over. He drove out under a sky streaked with pink, the radio crackling with a Johnny Cash tune that felt like it was meant for this moment. Mary's porch sagged under years of neglect, and when she opened the door, her eyes held the same grief Noah had seen in Duke's. She confirmed it. Duke was theirs, left behind when the accident tore their world apart. Mary hadn't known. He was still waiting. Noah's heart raced. This was it, the truth that could change everything. It was like the universe had handed him a torch, and now he had to carry it. What would Noah do with Duke's story now that he held the key? Noah stood under the gas station's flickering sign, the night air sharp with the scent of pine and gasoline. His phone glowed as he filmed Duke, the dog's silhouette framed against a sky bruised with twilight. Noah's voice, steady but warm, narrated the story he'd pieced together. The Carter family, the accident, Duke's unshakable fidelidad. He wasn't sure why he pressed post on that video, but something in his gut, maybe a whisper of destino, told him it was right. By morning, the internet had worked its magic, and Duke's story was no longer just a town's quiet legend. Who'd have thought a dog's devotion could ripple so far? What kind of waves would Noah's video send across the world? The video spread like wildfire, each view a spark lighting up screens from coast to coast. People watched, their morning coffee cooling in mugs that smelled of cinnamon and home. Duke's amber eyes, fixed on the road, stirred something deep. Esperanza, maybe? Or the ache of saudade for loves lost. Comments poured in. "This broke my heart. Someone find his family." Strangers shared the clip, their keyboards clicking in offices and living rooms where old clocks ticked like heartbeats. Noah checked his phone at the diner, the buzz, notifications drowning out the jukebox's twang. It was overwhelming, but wasn't that the beauty of stories? They connect us. How long would it take for Duke's story to reach the right eyes? Halfway across the state, Mary Carter sat on her faded couch, the one that still held the faint whiff of her sister's rosewater perfume. Her niece, Sarah, now grown, scrolled through her phone, the glow lighting up her face. When she saw Duke's face, she froze. "Aunt Mary," she whispered, voice trembling. "It's him." Mary's hands shook as she watched the video, tears blurring the screen. Duke's bark, that familiar low rumble, was like a voice from a dream. The Carters hadn't known he'd survived the accident, let alone waited all these years. It was a Milliger, plain and simple. And who doesn't believe in miracles when they stare you in the face? What would it take to bring Duke and his family back together? Sarah called Noah that afternoon, her words tumbling out like a dam breaking. "We thought he was gone," she said, her voice thick with years of grief. Noah listened, leaning against his truck, the metal warm from the sun and gritty with dust. He felt it, the weight of reuniting a family, the chance to heal a wound left by abandonment. He drove to Mary's house, the road lined with fields that shimmered like green glass under the noon light. When he showed them Duke's photo, Sarah clutched Mary's hand, both of them laughing through tears. The plan was set. They'd go to Duke. Sometimes don't you feel like the universe is stitching things back together? Would Duke recognize the family he'd waited for so long? By evening, Noah's video had millions of views, and the gas station was no longer just a dot on a map. Cars pulled in, not for fuel, but to see Duke, their tires crunching gravel like a chorus. The townsfolk gathered, their faces lit with pride as if Duke belonged to them all. Noah stood with Mary and Sarah at the edge of the lot, the air humming with anticipation and the faint buzz of crickets. Duke lifted his head, nose twitching, as a familiar scent, maybe Sarah's lavender shampoo, maybe the memory of home. Cut through the years. The moment was coming, and it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. What would happen when Duke finally saw his family again? The gas station glowed under a late afternoon sun, its light spilling across the pavement like warm honey. Duke stood at his usual post, his fur catching the golden hue, while the air buzzed with the hum of anticipation and the faint clink of soda bottles in a nearby cooler. Mary and Sarah Carter stepped out of Noah's truck, their shoes scuffing the gravel, each step heavy with 4 years of saudade. Sarah's hands trembled, clutching a faded collar, Duke's old one, stitched with his name in crooked blue thread. The crowd hushed, sensing the weight of the moment. Could a dog's heart still recognize a family after so long? What would Duke do when he saw them? Mary's voice broke the silence, soft and cracked like an old vinyl record. "Duke, boy, it's us." She knelt, her knees creaking, the scent of her peppermint gum mixing with the dusty air. Duke's ears flicked, his head tilting as if sifting through memories. Sarah took a step closer, her lavender shampoo trailing behind, a scent that once meant home. Duke's nose twitched and his tail gave a tentative wag, like a flag testing the wind. The crowd held its breath, their murmurs fading to nothing. You ever see a moment so pure it feels like the world stops? That's what this was. Milagro unfolding in real time. Would Duke bridge the years of separation with a single leap? Then it happened. Duke's eyes locked on Sarah, and a low whine escaped his throat, raw and full of reconhecimiento. He took one step, then another, his paws scraping the pavement like he was testing a dream. Sarah dropped to her knees, arms open, tears streaking her face. "Come on, buddy," she whispered. Duke bolted, a blur of fur and love crashing into her with a force that knocked her back. He buried his face in her chest, tail wagging so hard it stirred the dust. Mary laughed through sobs, her hands stroking Duke's head. It was lealtad rewarded, a family stitched back together by Amor. How would this reunion change them all? Noah stood back, his throat tight, filming the scene as the crowd erupted in cheers. The air felt electric, charged with the kind of esperanza that makes you believe in second chances. Duke licked Sarah's face, then turned to Mary, nuzzling her hand like he'd never left. The old collar slipped back onto his neck, seemed to seal the moment, a symbol of pertencimento reclaimed. Folks in the crowd wiped their eyes, some chuckling at their own tears. Who hasn't been caught off guard by a dog's love? It's the kind of thing that sneaks up and reminds you what matters. But now, the real work began. Could Duke find his place in a home he'd lost so long ago, as the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of coral? The Carters prepared to take Duke home. He hesitated, glancing back at the gas station, his post for 4 years. Sarah knelt again, her voice gentle. "It's okay, Duke. We're together now." He followed, climbing into the truck, his claws clicking on the metal floor. The crowd waved, their voices a soft chorus of goodbyes, and Noah felt a pang of pride. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a testament to perseverance, to the idea that love can wait out even the longest storms. The truck pulled away, and the gas station faded into the dusk, but the story wasn't over yet. What challenges would Duke face in rediscovering his home? The Carter house smelled of polished wood and fresh linens, a scent that once meant home to Duke, but now felt like a stranger's territory. The old farmhouse creaked under the weight of evening, its windows glowing with lamplight as Sarah led Duke inside. His claws clicked on the hardwood, hesitant, like he was stepping into a memory he couldn't quite trust. For 4 years, he'd known only the gas station's gravel and the open sky. Now, surrounded by walls and warmth, Duke paced, his eyes darting to the door. Reconstruction wasn't going to be easy. Not for a dog who'd carried abandono in his bones. Ever wonder how much a heart can hold before it learns to rest? What would it take for Duke to feel safe again? Sarah and Mary gave him space, their voices soft as they set out his old bed, its faded plaid fabric still carrying the faint whiff of hay from long-ago adventures. Duke sniffed it, his tail giving a single wag, but he didn't lie down. Instead, he circled the living room, pausing at the window where the moon hung like a silver coin. Mary watched, her hands twisting a dish towel, the kind her mother used to dry plates after Sunday suppers. "He's still waiting," she murmured, and Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of paciencia. They knew love wasn't enough, not yet. Sometimes don't you feel like healing is a dance, one step forward, two back? Would Duke ever settle into the rhythm of home? Small signs of confianza flickered, like fireflies in the dark. One morning, Duke followed Sarah to the kitchen, his nose twitching at the sizzle of bacon and the buttery aroma of biscuits baking. She tossed him a scrap, and he caught it mid-air, his eyes bright for the first time in days. Mary clapped, her laughter echoing like it hadn't in years. But nights were harder. Duke slept by the front door, his body curled tight, as if ready to bolt back to the gas station. Sarah lay awake, the tick of the grandfather clock marking time, wondering if Esperanza could mend what time had broken. What small victories would pave Duke's path forward? The backyard became a testing ground. Sarah tossed an old tennis ball, its felt worn smooth, hoping to coax Duke into play. He watched it roll, then trotted after it, his movements stiff but curious. The grass, damp with morning dew, clung to his paws, and the air carried the sharp tang of cut clover. For a moment, Duke was a puppy again, chasing Timmy across this same yard. Sarah saw it, the spark of allegria, and her heart lifted. But when a neighbor's car backfired, Duke froze, his ears pinned back, and retreated to the porch. Superação, she realized, wasn't a straight line. Ever notice how the smallest things can spark both joy and fear? How could the Carters help Duke reclaim his sense of belonging? By the end of the first month, Duke's pacing slowed. He began to nap in his old bed, his snores a soft rumble that filled the house with life. One evening, as the air grew thick, with the scent of approaching rain, he climbed onto the couch beside Mary. She froze, afraid to startle him, then gently scratched his ears. Duke sighed, his weight settling against her. and Sarah smiled from the doorway. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, a testament to resiliencia, to the slow, stubborn work of rebuilding trust. The road was long, but Duke was finding his way. What challenges might still test Duke's fragile recovery? The 4th of July arrived with a snap of firecrackers and the smoky tang of barbecue drifting through the Carters' neighborhood. The farmhouse porch sagged under strings of fairy lights, their soft glow dancing on Duke's fur as he lay beside Sarah, his head resting on her knee. For weeks he'd been settling in, chasing squirrels, napping in sunlit patches, his confianza growing like wildflowers after rain. But when the first firework boomed, a sharp crack that split the night, Duke's ears pinned back and his body tensed. Fear, that old shadow, wasn't done with him yet. Ever notice how just when you think you're steady, life throws a curveball? How would Duke face this sudden jolt to his recovery? The explosions kept coming, each one a thunderclap that rattled the windows and sent Duke scrambling. He bolted from the porch, his paws slipping on the worn boards, and vanished into the dark. Sarah's heart sank, the laughter of neighbors fading to a dull hum. She called his name, her voice fraying against the pop, pop, pop of sparklers. Mary joined her, flashlight beam slicing through the yard, its grass still warm from the day's heat and scented with crushed mint. "He's scared, but he's strong," Mary said, her words a prayer. Duke had survived 4 years alone. Could Meadow undo all his progress? Where had Duke gone? And would he find his way back? They searched until midnight, their shoes soaked. With dew, the air now cool and heavy with the metallic tang of spent fireworks. Sarah's mind raced, picturing Duke back at the gas station, alone again. His Leal dad tethered to a past they'd fought to reclaim. But as dawn broke, painting the sky in soft pinks and smelling of fresh earth, a neighbor called. Duke was at the edge of town, curled up under a willow tree, its branches trailing like a curtain. Sarah ran, her breath catching, and found him trembling but unharmed. Sometimes don't you think the universe gives you a second chance to prove yourself? What would it take for Duke to choose home over fear? Sarah knelt beside Duke, her hands gentle on his quivering fur, whispering words that carried the warmth of home, promises of safety, of amour. Duke's eyes met hers, and though fear lingered, something else flickered, a spark of resilientia. He followed her back, his steps slow, tail low, as the morning filled with the chirp of sparrows and the faint clatter of breakfast dishes from nearby houses. Mary waited at the gate, her face lighting up as Duke trotted past, choosing the farmhouse. Over the open road, it was a quiet victory, but isn't that how strength shows itself? In the small, stubborn choice to stay. How would this moment shape Duke's path forward? That evening, the Carters sat on the porch, the air soft with the scent of honeysuckle and the hum of crickets. Duke lay at their feet, his breathing steady, no longer flinching at distant pops. Sarah scratched his ears and he leaned into her, a sigh escaping his chest. The setback had tested them all, but it also revealed Duke's força, a courage forged in years of waiting, now tempered by love. Mary smiled, her voice low. "He's teaching us, isn't he? To keep going no matter what." The stars above seemed to nod, and the night felt like a promise of better days. What new chapter awaited Duke now that he'd faced his fears? The Carter farmhouse woke each morning to the trill of birds and the warm, yeasty scent of bread cooling on the counter. Duke, no longer a shadow by the door, now padded through the house with a quiet ease, his claws tapping a soft rhythm on the floorboards. The gas station days were fading, like a Polaroid left too long in the sun, but confianza didn't come all at once. It grew in small moments, each one a stitch in the fabric of home. Sarah watched him sniff the air, his tail wagging at the promise of breakfast, and felt a glow of esperanza. Ever think about how the simplest things, like a dog's wag, can make you believe in new beginnings? What steps would Duke take to fully embrace his home? Out in the yard, the world was alive with summer's hum. The buzz of bees, the rustle of leaves kissed by a breeze that smelled of sun-warmed peaches. Sarah tossed a frisbee, its red edge glinting. and Duke bounded after it, his legs stretching in a way they hadn't in years. He caught it mid-air, landing with a playful shake that sent grass clippings flying. Mary clapped from the porch, her laughter bright as the jangle of wind chimes. This was Allegria, pure and unscripted, and it felt like a gift. But Sarah knew healing was slow. Don't we all carry scars that need time to soften? How would Duke's playfulness shape his bond? With the Carters, evenings brought their own magic. The family sat on the porch, the wood creaking under their weight, the air thick with the musky scent of evening primrose. Duke sprawled beside Sarah, his head on her lap, his fur warm from the day's sun. She traced the white patch on his muzzle, now more silver than before, and thought of Resilientia, not just Duke's but theirs. Losing Timmy, John, and Ellen had hollowed them, yet here they were, rebuilding. Duke's presence was a bridge between past and present, a reminder that Amer could endure. Ever notice how animals seem to know exactly when you need them? What deeper connections would Duke forge with his family? One afternoon, a storm rolled in, the sky churning gray and the air sharp with ozone. Thunder rumbled, and Duke's ears twitched, but he didn't bolt. Instead, he pressed against Mary, who sat knitting, the click of her needles steady as a heartbeat. She hummed an old hymn, its melody weaving through the patter of rain on the tin roof. Duke's eyes softened, and he lay down, his sigh a release of old fears. This was Super Asome, a quiet triumph over the panic that once drove him away. It made Sarah wonder, maybe the universe sends us these creatures to teach us how to stay. How close was Duke to fully belonging again? By late summer, Duke's transformation was undeniable. He greeted neighbors at the gate, his bark a warm welcome rather than a warning. He chased fireflies in the twilight, his silhouette darting through grass that glowed under a lavender sky. Sarah and Mary watched, their coffee mugs steaming with the nutty aroma of decaf, and shared a look of gratitude. Duke wasn't just a dog. He was their proof of perseverance, a living lesson that trust could be rebuilt one day at a time. The farmhouse felt whole again, and the future stretched out like a sunlit road. What final moment would seal Duke's journey home? The Carter kitchen glowed under the soft light of a chandelier, its crystals casting tiny rainbows on the walls. The air was rich with the savory warmth of pot roast and the sweet tang of apple pie baking, scents that wrapped the house in memories of Sunday dinners long past. Duke lay on a rug by the table, his chin resting on his paws, eyes half closed as Sarah set plates with a gentle clink. After 4 years of waiting and months of rebuilding, this moment, ordinary yet profound, felt like pertencimento sealed. Ever feel like the simplest gatherings hold the deepest magic? How had Duke become the heart of this family once more? Outside, the autumn evening hummed with the rustle of leaves skittering across the yard, their crisp, earthy smell drifting through an open window. Duke's tail thumped softly as Mary passed him a scrap of meat, her chuckle warm as she caught his hopeful glance. He'd grown plump, his coat gleaming, no longer the lean sentinel of the gas station. The family laughed over old stories, Timmy's muddy boots, Ellen's terrible singing, each tale a thread tying them to the past and to Duke, their living link to love unbroken. Isn't it something? How a dog can anchor you to what matters? What? Small rituals would cement Duke's place in their lives? After dinner, they moved to the backyard, where a bonfire crackled, its smoky glow painting their faces in gold. Duke trotted after a stick Sarah tossed, his bark echoing with allegria that hadn't faded since summer. The air carried the cool bite of fall, spiced with pine from nearby woods. Neighbors joined, their voices mingling with the pop of embers, and Duke wove through the crowd, nuzzling hands and wagging at familiar faces. This was Comunidade, built on the lealdad of a dog who'd waited and the family who'd welcomed him back. Ever notice how animals draw people together like nothing else? How would this night reflect Duke's full return? As the fire died to glowing coals, Sarah sat on the grass, Duke curling up beside her, his warmth a steady comfort. The sky stretched wide, stars blinking like they'd witnessed every step of Duke's journey. Mary hummed an old lullaby, its notes soft against the night's quiet, and Sarah felt a lump in her throat. This was it. Esperanza fulfilled, a cycle closed. Duke's eyes, once fixed on a lonely road, now shone with trust, his snores a testament to resiliencia. The pain of abandono, the fear of loss, had given way to a home rebuilt. Sometimes, don't you think the universe knows exactly how to end a story? What lasting lesson would Duke leave with the Carters? By bedtime, Duke followed Sarah upstairs, his paws thumping on the creaky steps, and settled on his bed by her side, its fabric now scented with lavender from a new blanket. The house sighed into silence, the only sound the faint tick of a clock in the hall. Duke's journey from a gas station ghost to a family's heart showed that Aymer could outlast time, that Super-Asson could mend even the deepest wounds. As Sarah drifted off, she smiled, knowing Duke's story wasn't just theirs. It was a gift to anyone who'd ever loved and lost. And that, friends, is the kind of truth that stays with you. What would Duke's story inspire in those who heard? Duke's tale is more than a dog's devotion. It's a mirror held up to our own hearts. From the gas station's lonely vigil to the warmth of a family reunited, he showed us lealtad that waits, resiliencia that rebuilds, and amor that never quits. Sometimes the greatest teachers have 4 paws and teach us to live with hearts wide open. So grab your coffee, hug your pets a little closer, and think about the lessons they've slipped into your life. And you, dear listener, have you had an animal who changed your world? Drop it in the comments below. Let's keep Duke's story alive together.